Redditors who have hired a private investigator, what did you discover? By Reddit.
My vindictive aunt hired one to spy on me, and the guy found out quite a bit about me, like my dental records and stuff. I mean, I'm a pretty boring person with nothing to hide, so the guy didn't find much to use against me.
Why was she so vindictive? Like, what made her want to hire a pie?
She got into an argument with my mother about inheritance. I swear, it makes people do crazy things.
That was going to be another question I had. What crazy things have family members done while fighting over inheritance?
They got into a pretty intense fist fight and ended up completely trashing my living room.
I'm assuming you live in your own home or something, but why are they fighting in your living room? Or was it your mom's living room? Happy Cake Day.
I was relatively unbiased throughout the whole ordeal, so they came to my place to discuss.
So they trashed neutral ground. I think they forfeit their share of the loot according to Magic Universe rules. Or devoured for breaking rules of hospitality something something. I should stop reading the occult section.
No, you're right. They at least need to pay tribute to appease the insulted party.
It is known.
In the name of Raphael before us, they have broken the sacred pact. In the sound of the 10 holy names of the Tetragrammaton they have desecrated hallowed ground. Upon their blood and word their claim is forfeit.
Damn, that's like holding a negotiation in a church, then proceed to piss in the holy water.
Keyword, discuss.
I'm a boring person. My mom and my aunt had a fist fight in my living room.
Honestly, just knowing interesting people can bump your interestingness up by a lot.
You check out this guy with the squeaky clean family over here.
Did they help clean up?
My mom's younger brother had a meltdown when my grandfather passed away, as he thought grandpa's estate was going to be split 3 ways, but because my mom had cared for him in his later years, and the brothers had kept away from him, especially when he went into a home, he left 80% to her and 10% each to the 2 brothers in his will. Still a decent amount of money, but not anywhere close to the 6-figure sum my mother ended up getting. Her elder brother wasn't bothered and they still see him regularly. Her younger brother, who wasn't exactly short of cash as he worked in the city, had a complete meltdown. His wife sent nasty letters to my mother, and they haven't spoken to the rest of the family since, and this was 15 years ago. I know they have tried to pass the olive branch a couple of times, but he just isn't interested. A shame, as he was like my big brother growing up.
Here's the worst one, I think. My dad's employee's husband died and the children fought over the inheritance, leading to murder-suicide. That poor woman lost her family all in a month. Edit. Oh, then her house burned down.
Don't F with the monkey's paw.
When my great-grandmother died, my great-uncle moved to the property to postpone the inevitable conflict, which worked. When he died, my grandmother and great-aunt immediately rifled through the entire property looking for the cash my great-grandmother withdrew and supposedly hid on the property shortly before she died. The property is 46 acres and has upwards of 20 old barns, sheds and whatnot. This began a 3-year conflict between my father and his support and his mother and her support. My father wanting to preserve the land and history, my grandmother wanting to liquidate. Ultimately my grandmother won, dispute being estranged from the land for 20 years leading up to this. She phrased the land and has been collecting royalties ever since. I've not spoken to my great-aunt in over 8 years because of this conflict, and I have only seen my grandmother at Christmas and Thanksgiving since then. About 2 years ago my mother, who cared for my great-grandmother for 10 years leading up to her death, told me and my father that she gave my great-grandmother a ride to the bank about 6 months before she died. My grandmother left the bank with a duffel bag full of cash and told my mother she was gonna burn it. My mother pleaded for her not to, but she insisted that it was her money, her choice. My mother stepped aside. While my grandmother and great-aunt wasted their time looking for money, me and my father watched angrily, while my mother laughed and smiled, finally understanding why she set it on fire those years ago.
You should ask this on Ask Reddit as well. Would love to read the crazy responses.
Oh, I hate it when it's about money. They form clans like some nasty family version of a war, and you never know who's on which team until they get you.
It ruins so many relationships. Anybody I know, I just assume if they die I get nothing in their will. It makes life much more enjoyable and the relationship simpler.
So you're admitting you have teeth?
Maybe their dental records contain information on their lack of teeth.
I read the book How to Disappear written by a type who does those investigations, and yes, they definitely were obtained through illegal means, but blackmail is also illegal.
Being able to get access to your medical records like that sounds like a HIPAA lawsuit waiting to pay you.
For real. Op needs to find out which dentist is giving out her patient data, and go to town on M. HIPAA doesn't F around.
How did you end up finding out? And how does a pie get dental records while you're still alive?
Now I'm not fully sure on how he got the records, but I later ended up finding out over a drink with a close family friend.
An affair that my wife had been lying to me about for a year. I got incredibly damning photos that I texted to both of them just after calling my wife on the phone and having her lie to me once more.
Was her name Seattle by chance?
No, she changed her name to Oklahoma City.
Pain.
Nowhere is safe for Supersonics fans.
I had one hired against me, and they found out everything. Tattoos that aren't visible normally, the address I lived at in a different country, medical records from an accident that happened 6 years prior, so many random things that aren't publicly available.
Do you know why they were hired to find that information? How did you find out about it?
They hired one against themselves.
Smart move.
I don't know why, but this had me cracking up. It's 3 a.m. where I am, and I'm pretty sure I woke a few people.
That's how I read it.
How did they find out about your tattoos? Perving at the beach? Does your tattoo artist keep records?
Arrest records. Tattoos are generally recorded in the arrest process as they are identifying marks.
Aren't only visible identifying marks recorded?
If I recall correctly, tattoo are considered identifiers. Edit. That night vary state to state.
Imagine getting misidentified for some criminal because you kinda look alike and you both have that pork fried rice tattoo because you were drunk and the artist said it meant courage when you pointed it on the wall.
Hi, I'm sorry to bother you, but my GF had a tattoo done at your place a couple years ago. There was an accident and we are trying to identify her body. Can you tell me what kind of tattoo you did on her? Maybe do you have a photo?
Then they should be able to describe the tattoo. I doubt an artist would give a photo to someone who claims to have known the victim and doesn't know what the tattoo looks like, but that it exists. And if they claim that they're investigating, I'd hope they ask for some kind of proof.
Tattoo artist could have posted them on their social media and tagged them.
Isn't medical history protected by HIPAA? How did they get a hold of that poo legally? Also curious about why you hired one against yourself. LOL.
It occurs to me a good pie is probably somewhat sociopathic. All it takes is a convincing lie to get someone to give up information.
I know this will be handy for real life stuff, but I'm honestly mostly reading this for things due in my next D&D session, and the one after that.
I honestly only recommend social engineering for anything but using on random people IRL. It's great to study if you have a serious interest in pentesting / ethical hacking. Then, like you said, it can also be fun for games like D&D. The reason I recommend against using it on people IRL is getting labeled as manipulative is a stench you can't wash off.
Not even that. Most hospitals don't hire very good IT security guys, not to mention lots of people steal and sell that kind of information. The CCP has stolen most Americans' medical records already.
Just a reminder, not every Redditor is from the USA. HIPAA is USA only, though most countries do have something protecting FI.
I had can mean different things in English. It happened to me, I did this thing. The former thing is far more likely in this context.
Probably someone hired a private investigator against her.
Yes, that's what I said.
They didn't say they hired one against themselves.
Billing. Damn, being a pie sounds like so much fun.
Had one used against me, thanks current father-in-law. He found out that I was seriously a desperately boring person. Aside from my boring work and education history, he learned of 2 of my exes and the fact that they were pretty boring too, though one sadly struggled with an eating disorder. I don't think he knew what, Yak played World of Warcraft with his last ex, a lot, meant, but he learned I was adopted and had grown up with a very nice pair of parents, non-bio, obviously. You know, until this second, I assumed he had wasted his money, and ended up with literally no interesting info. I'm kinda curious if the guy found out about my bio parents, and wonder if that colored his view of me.
So did you guys ever talk about it?
We sure did. After my wife and I had a wonderful trip to Disneyland, where I proposed to her by the castle, though not at the effing wishing well, because I'm an idiot and didn't know there was one. We sat on the back porch and he slung some of my history at me, including stuff about my ex that my wife didn't know at the time. I didn't leave the relationship with my non-gamer wife with a discussion of it was definitely awkward, and a little violating, but mostly left me feeling a little low that you-ish. I'm kinda boring. He likes me today at least.
Honestly, being boring isn't a bad thing. I think it's underrated.
Yeah, it's not a bad life being the dude who drove a sports car for a decade and was never so much as pulled over because he drives like a grandmother.
LOL, excitement is usually being scared to death or seriously miserable, while wishing you were someplace else. Then after a few years, it becomes an adventure. Once you can't remember the frostbite or the constant thoughts that you were about to die.
F that guy though.
Yeah. I had given 0 cause for suspicion. His daughter loves me to death and the feeling is mutual. In the decade-long marriage we have had, I've raised my voice maybe twice, and neither time in anger. We may be a boring couple, but eventually I got the medal of approval from him. He told one of his friends that no matter what, he knows Yacht is safe with Yak, and that I would do anything and anything to protect her. Weird knowing that was a conversation, but * shrugs star. All's well that ends well, I suppose.
Did your now Yacht have super bad history with partners previously? Even guys who aren't violent or cheaters can be horrendous with money, etc., so a new marriage starts with unshakable debt forever. Like, my daughter can't pick a guy for shiz, so let's make sure this dude is okay. Also, Yak and Yacht is adorable and I hope you have called her that in real life.
Now, to throw it to you, without a sorry or during a long drinking session where he can say sorry, is private, DK territory. Also, being boring is underrated. Have a nice hobby you enjoy, avoid crazy and gambling debt like non-boring people seem to be part of.
He likes me today, at least that's what you think. Hire a pie on him just to double check.
It feels a bit like Meet the Parents in real life.
I've hired them for incredibly boring reasons. I work as a lawyer, and occasionally I'll need a document from a courthouse that's too far away for me to just go there and pick it up. Occasionally the courthouse staff will refuse to make copies and mail them to me. So I've hired a few pies to pick up what I needed.
Paralegals don't do that stuff.
It could be in a totally different state, and if your company doesn't keep staff on retainer in every county, then you gotta hire somebody to go literally look through physical files and pull what you need.
That makes more sense.
Ever heard of Rachel Zane smirking face?
No. Who's that?
Some princess who does paralegal work in her spare time.
Like an actual princess? As in royalty? Edit, spelling.
Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, married Prince Harry, played a character named Rachel Zane on the TV show Suits, which was a legal drama.
Ah, okay. I was honestly wondering where another royal had popped up from out of nowhere.
I worked for a background check company that did this for a while. Eventually most stuff was computerized, and if we couldn't get it via internet or fax, then we'd tell the customer we couldn't get it. It wasn't worth it for us to provide the better service. Different line of work from what you were doing though. Florida was the worst. If y'all want to be a criminal, go do it in Florida, apparently. They're not talking to anyone.
That's super interesting to me because they literally have mugshot magazines that they sell at 7-Eleven. I always thought that the reason we have the Florida Man meme is because so much of their legal proceedings are public record. In what way does FLA make it more difficult to get info?
It is interesting, and I can't answer. I'm aware that their public records are easy to access for local journalists making the Florida Man thing, but my company always expressed discontent with Florida regarding obtaining records. I've also heard similar complaints numerous other times, so it wasn't just us. 2 different systems is all I can think of, but I don't know the answer. I was a low-level employee at the background check company. 60 Minutes made an episode focusing on the issue of Florida hiding criminals.
Florida has some bad trade-offs though.
Yeah, like being Florida.
Florida was the worst. If y'all want to be a criminal, go do it in Florida, apparently. They're not talking to anyone. That's because if they did, it would become all they would have time to do.
I bet the alligators would talk.
That is so unsatisfying that it's kinda funny.
FYI, freelance journalists are also often very good at this stuff. Any reporter who has been on a courthouse beat knows how to request records, who to ask, what shenanigans to look out for, and where else to look. Like some clerks will have a separate drawer with files for cases that are due to appear in the next week or month.
Don't they have document retrieval services for this? Or are they just outsourcing it to pies from there and you're cutting out the middleman? Not me, a friend of mine in US got a pie hired against him. It was his mother-in-law who hired the pie. The mill hated his guts and my friend isn't from US, he's working in Silicon Valley as a software engineer and trying to get his US residence through his American wife. Even after 2 kids, the mill was still insisting to get him deported. She caused all kinds of trouble, even though her daughter asked her many times to stop it or she will never talk to her again. Every time she promises she will, but then they figure there's a new police chase after him. The mill plotted all kinds of poo, depossession, gun possession, kidnapping, of his own kids, living in US illegally, he's legal, and finally belonging to a terrorist group. The pie was hired to dig some dirt, anything that can be useful. My friend is pretty boring, the only poo you would find against him is his putty code.
The only poo you would find against him is his putty code. Lol nesting. What's that?
Heard enough. Deport him. Effing hate putty code. Causes real problems with financial impact.
If you start deporting developers because of putty code, you won't find anyone left, haha. Even worse if you let other developers judge.
As a developer, not professional, I can confirm that my code is putty and I deserve to be deported.
I hire a private investigator about once a year to give me an update on my stalker, to ensure he's not looking for me again. It costs a lot of money, but I sleep easier. Also, stalker is dying of cancer and I feel pretty good about that.
I hope you get the peace you deserve sooner rather than later.
Thank you. I was surprised how emotional I got when I found out he is dying. It was just a release of tension I didn't even realize I had been holding.
My mother recently found out one of her ex-boyfriends died 2 years ago from cancer. He was one of the worst human beings I have ever met and I am not ashamed to say I'm glad he's dead and that the world is a better place without him. My mother seemed to take it with mixed emotions. They were pretty serious. He lived with us for like 2 years until my mother kicked him out. He was cheating on my mother with another woman whom he had married. He'd basically been living a double life and she busted him.
I post this John Darnielle quote every time it's relevant, which is surprisingly often none.
No, amen.
Have a stalker too, she seems to have way too much info. Can relate.
Sounds like a pie is also a kind of stalker. Stalking a stalker.
Well yeah, except it's done legally and it's called surveillance. When regular people stalk, it's because of a fantasy that someone has for a person and practically is an obsession. When a pie surveillance someone, it's obviously easy and from way afar, they don't do any weird poo.